get started on our next panel here so we can wrap up conversations. Well, it's great to have you all here in the room with us. This is the economic room. So now, if you're like, oh wait, crap, I did not want to be here. Now is your time to exit gracefully and make it to one of the other ones. But if you're in the economic group, then you're in the right room right now. My name is Dan McCoy, and I mentioned earlier I'm the director of the Worth Initiative here at the University of Wyoming. And we're really excited to be kind of focused on the economic pillar of sustainability. And really at the core of the economic pillar in Wyoming are really the businesses that make the outdoor recreation space really what it is. And we're really excited. I'm really excited to be joined with some really great business leaders from around the state and emerging business leaders, I would also say. And we'll get into that here in a minute with our panelists. So before, really the focus of this panel is on sharing thoughts, ideas, and experience on what it's like to be an entrepreneur in outdoor recreation space in Wyoming. And so the lineup that we have here, and I'll let them kind of do a little bit of an introduction of themselves as well, but Wes Allen with Sunlight Sports, Mike Lilligren from Maven Outdoor Equipment Company, Jaxon King with Jaxon, what's the official business name?
It's Jax Outdoors.
It's Jax Outdoors, not to be confused with the trademarked Jax Outdoors. Okay, great. Okay, LLC, yes, not the major retailer. Yes, and also a graduate of the Haub School here, recent graduate of the Haub School and the Outdoor Recreation and Tourism Management degree. I've actually got a great story to share about Jaxon sometime if we do have time, a good one. And John Kirlin, who's the former executive director of Antelope's Butte Foundation and runs several special events that I'm hoping that you'll talk about as well. So we are going to be kind of running this as a panel, and the hope is that we will kind of go around kind of a little round robin of questions. And so I'm going to start out here to kind of ask and start with you, Wes, over here, is to tell us about your business or organization and how it came to be.
Well, the organization that our business is Sunlight Sports. It's an outdoor store in Cody. It's 52 years old this year, so it came to be before me.
Yeah.
In full disclosure, for those of you who may or may not know, my sister-in-law is Representative Newsom, who's here as well. So that business got started in 1971. I met my wife working on the sales floor as a part-time salesperson back in the 90s. And we wound up having careers in other places in the outdoor industry and then coming back and buying it in 13 years ago today, actually.
Great. Thanks, Wes. Yeah, Mike.
Yeah. So as I don't know if any of you heard the session before lunch, but as Mike Jones mentioned, we kind of spun off or grew up in a little incubator that was called the Brunton Company in Riverton, Wyoming. Three of us all worked at that company together and had a little dissatisfaction with the direction that was going. And in 2008, sat around some campfires and drank a beer or two and really asked ourselves, what do we need to do to live in Lander, Wyoming? And we started putting some pieces together, some networks of mostly relationships we had and knowledge we had, experience we had, and ideas we had. I wouldn't actually call any of the three of us entrepreneurial, but we were innovative in that we were scrappy, decide whatever it took to live where we want to live and where we want to raise our families. And eventually that evolved into Maven Optics, which started 10 years ago in July. And now we're 20 employees strong and selling optics direct to consumer model, as Amy mentioned, all around the world. So
thanks, Jaxon.
If you didn't catch, my name is Jaxon King, and I have my own LLC called Jax Outdoors. It is brand new, a year old this month, and I started doing operations last winter following my graduation last spring at the University of Wyoming to the Hub School. And I learned about outdoor recreation and tourism management, coupled that with environment and natural resources. So I had like the educational slash just professional development in that. And so that was kind of the direction I wanted to go. And then, similar to your observation of something you didn't like, the direction of a business you were working for that you didn't like the way it was going. I kind of was in an organization like that myself, seeing it going one way, and decided to use my skills that I'd learned here at the university to create my own company to offer outdoor recreation services, specifically guiding, fishing. I just secured some permits this year to operate on BLM land and the state park. So super excited about that. And then developing some connections and some networks across the state to build my own clientele base so that I can keep everything to myself and hopefully grow as things move on, maybe get a flash up here down the road after a little bit, but yeah.
John.
Well, I'm John Kirlin, and as Dan mentioned, I'm the former executive director of the Antelope Butte Foundation, which brought back the Antelope Butte ski area. If you're familiar with the Northern Bighorns and Highway 14 there. And so that was really something that kind of fell in the lap. It was an upstart grassroots nonprofit organization looking to get this thing up and going. And they needed kind of a one-man band to come in and the energy to just see what they can do and get the thing going. And it took us a couple of years, but we got that thing up and running. And it's been, 2019 was the inaugural reopening of the area. And so had record ski year visits in the last several years. And then same time, I co-founded and am the race director of the Dead Swede Hundo gravel bicycle race up in Sheridan. And that was, again, one of those kind of, hey, maybe we'll put together a bike ride and see if people want to do it and get going. And thought maybe we'd get 50 people there. And the first year we had 150 riders. As of this morning, I've got 900 riders registered. And it's just grown into just be a big staple for just economic development and boost in the economy and Sheridan County and just the surrounding region. And then also owner of a Cirque Solutions LLC. I've just branched out as a kind of a outdoor rec business leadership consultant and kind of strengthen communities through outdoor events or things like that. I grew up as a traveling musician, so I learned a lot of hard knock business at the back alley of a bar. So a lot of that too.
Wow, great, awesome. Next question I have, and John, I'll actually start with you on this is, how is the entrepreneurial environment in Wyoming and how could it be improved?
Well, I think it's, it really is ripe and it's great. And Wyoming is super easy. There's more LLCs formed in Wyoming than probably any state that I've done any research on. I mean, you pay your $100 and go to the post office and you've got an LLC and you're now a business owner, which is, bottom line, that's pretty easy, but there's a lot of freedom and a lot of flexibility in what you can do. But I think some improvements, that's my bad.
That's fine.
Just some of the improvement is just some of the networking that is not really there because I've always said Wyoming is a small town, but we're really long streets. And so getting together with other folks like this isn't common practice as well as it could be, just because we're not in the same population density there. So this in itself is a good improvement.
Yeah, and so probably in the special event space, particularly where you're kind of working in, having like a minimum number or some type of number of other people who are running special events who you could kind of coordinate with and talk with. I mean, who are kind of facing those same kind of challenges or issues that you are to have those networks.
Absolutely. And with that, there aren't a lot of people in that space. And then if there are, we're pulling from the same demographic. And so trying to not step on toes. So when we started the Dead Swede, my original plan was to do it in September. But our demographic, a lot of folks we were going to be pulling from were Casper and the Black Hills. And there was another event over there, big prominent event. So I was like, well, I can't be too close to that. Oh, what about this? Well, there's that event. And those people are good friends of ours. I can't steal their participants. And so we ended up coming back several months and now we're always in June. But yeah, there's just that density isn't there. And that collaboration, especially in some of the special event space, and then also in like the tourism specific marketing for those things. Just having some challenges there, running a for-profit business event that is drawing economic support, however, being turned down for tourism marketing grants because we're a for-profit company.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, John. Jaxon, yeah, you are very new in the you're an entrepreneur. I mean, I know maybe some of us don't identify that way, but I would identify you in that space. What has been your experience kind of starting this up?
I think, to leapfrog off of what you said, that the access to it is really easy for business, just starting up business. Like the process was fairly straightforward, fairly affordable, and encouraged, through my education at the university, encouraged, by other models across Wyoming, just seeing people do their own kinds of businesses and thriving, and just kind of wanting to do that was super easy here. And so yeah, that was a big encouragement for why I did what I did. And then being in it, I think like my first barrier was running into like what am I trying to say, not hostile or nasty competition, but very oft people who were not interested in the collaborative effort or the community effort. It was like, oh, there's a new outfitter, we've got competition, we need to make sure that doesn't grow. And I felt that just from the start. And not intimidating in any way, but it's just like, as we sit here as business owners, we want collaboration, we want to see growth for everybody, and that's not something I got to experience right away. Hopefully can break down those barriers and everybody can get on the same page of growth. I want you to grow, you want me to grow, I can help him, he can help me. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Same question to you, Mike.
So collaboration, word of the day.
Yeah.
We're up here, obviously, and I would piggyback off that. I think you guys are spot on collaboration, but I think it's the key part is taking that a step further and actually building relationships and knowing your relationships and utilizing those relationships. I think it's really helpful as a business beginner to find your mentors and to find people who can advise you, consult with you, and help you grow in those areas. And it can be as official as you want, or it can be as unofficial as you want. But definitely finding the word maven is an influencer or a trusted expert. Find the mavens in your community that you need in specific areas. So like my role in the company is finance and administration. I have 0 finance classes. I've never taken an accounting and I regret that because I've had to learn a lot of things the really hard way. But what I found were mentors in that area that I could go to and I could say, hey, Fabian Lobera, you are a CPA and a CFO. Tell me what, whatever the question was, and work those things through. So I think it's really important to find those experts that you trust and that can influence you and you can help work with them and build those relationships. And that's from, because I think, and we talked about this early on, I think the entrepreneurial spirit, the entrepreneurial attitude is sometimes juxtaposed with what you need to succeed, because you're a spark, you're a fire, you have ideas, but execution is really important as a business owner. And so the other piece of that, I think, is build relationships with people who can help you execute. And that also people that have those skill sets, those qualities that you don't have that you need. And so I was very lucky that I had 2 other partners and that we came in as equals, and we're all very, very, very different people. We bring very different things to the table, but together we make a pretty good whole. So that was pretty lucky. But I think build those relationships is super important.
And Mike, so just going off that really quickly. So where do you find those relationships? Where are those networks and that you can kind of tap into, especially as a business owner? I mean, especially with Wyoming being so small. And Jaxon, I'm also kind of thinking about you. I mean, like, are you getting involved with the Wyoming Outfitters and Guides Association, or what are those networks that can really help those businesses be successful?
Yeah, that's really good. And there are networks out there. I mean, and we're in one right now. And
Yeah,
I think this is
sure.
a great collaborative environment. And you find them where you live. First of all, so for me, I moved to Wyoming as a rock climber, and I worked odd jobs as a rock climber, and I kind of stumbled my way through life. And I've still, some of the people that I met in that user group, I found that the experts that I needed in those places. And then the next phase for me was having a professional career at Brunton. And that's where I mentioned some of the people I met from there. But there are places out there. The Chamber of Commerce, great place to meet those people and to ask about those people. Your local economic development associations, like, meet those people, make that connection, be involved in the user groups, the cycling clubs, the climbers festivals, the whatever's passion for you, be involved with those organizations and meet those people. But yeah, you have to keep your eyes open for it all the time, because you'll find them in interesting spaces. Rotary Club. I know I sound like an old man, and maybe I am, but I joined the Rotary Club. I went and joined the Rotary Club. I've made so many relationships there of people that are outside of my circle, but they have expertise that's really helpful to me, and they want to talk about it.
Great. Wes, a question for you, kind of a little bit on that entrepreneurial thing. Another thing that a term that I learned when I kind of communicated a lot with my friends and colleagues over in the College of Business was entrepreneurship. And that's this idea that you can take an existing business that's been around for a little while and do something that's unique or different, that kind of goes in a slightly different direction, using, leveraging brands, or maybe it's a specific line of retail equipment that you hadn't been involved with, that Sunlight Sports wasn't involved with. I'm wondering if there's any, kind of to the question of, how is the entrepreneurship environment in Wyoming? I mean, you've also been I feel that you've been entrepreneurial as well. For example, hosting, I remember coming up there and having a beer. You had some kind of special event, and I still have my glow in the dark pint glass, which is really cool. So I don't know. I'm just kind of thinking, just kind of opening up more space for you to kind of talk about that entrepreneurial environment that you find.
Sure. I think that there's two pieces to this. Entrepreneurial, that's a good term. I like that. We purchased our business from my wife's family. And when we bought the business, I had an existing network already, because I'd already had a 15-year career in the outdoor industry. So I had been working with other people that have businesses like ours already. So, Wyoming is not just a small town with long streets, but it's a small population. There's a limited pool of people that you can connect with to, that are far enough away where they're not going to be threatened by a new business, and are willing to share things. So making connections outside the state, obviously is pretty key. And one of the things I learned from that network was that you needed to mean something to your local community if you're going to have a successful business. And so when we went into our business, if you've been around small businesses in Wyoming, you'll know that one of the things that happens all the time is you have donation season, where a lot of the money that you made goes to the cheerleading camps in the spring. So that's an important part of being a small business. But what we did specifically, and that glow in the dark pint glass is a tactic in this plan, is we decided we weren't going to go into new activities per se. We had all the lines we really wanted as far as the brands that you'd expect coming into a store like ours. We decided to really lean into why we bought the business, and then be very overt about that. We decided to take 2% of our gross and give it to nonprofits that got kids outside in our community every year. We're a retailer, so 5% of your gross is generally your profit, maybe if you have a good year. So it's 40% of our profit we're giving to nonprofits. And it was a way to do marketing differently than the business had done it before. It was a way to approach business differently. The glow-in-the-dark pint glass, we have a kind of hidden little bar in our store. And if you buy one of those glow-in-the-dark pint glasses,
It's a good deal.
Dan was kind enough to do, you buy it for $15. We give the $15 to whatever nonprofit out of our list you designate. And then every Thursday night, we'll fill it with a beer for free. So we've been doing this for 5 years. It's cost me a lot of money in beer, but it's the cheapest marketing that we could have done. And it built, more importantly, it built a community around the store. And so, I guess I would cap that off by saying, all new ideas are remixes. And we had that tactic from our entrepreneurial and entrepreneurial network. We saw that from other people across the country and were able to synthesize that into something that would work in Cody.
Yeah, that's great. That community stuff. Do you want to
touch on a little bit on that too, and not just with your profit there, but Wes then several years ago donated a piece of ski tuning equipment to Antelope Butte, and which actually helped create another business, Wax on Wheels, that if you've ever been up to Antelope Butte in the wintertime, there's a trailer up there and they do ski tuning and sharpening and snowboard stuff. That piece of equipment came from Wes's shop because they're upgrading finally to a new piece of equipment. But because of that philanthropic nature and setting that culture, it created a whole new culture and opportunity right there. So just that multiplication of culture is really cool to see.
Yeah, that's great. Well, so the next thing I want to move into is the challenges that you all are facing as business owners in Wyoming. And I know Mike and with John, we talked a little bit about some of these things. You guys want to maybe kind of give us an idea or kind of a taste of maybe not every challenge, but some of the key challenges that your businesses are facing.
Sure. There's a myriad of challenges that make Wyoming fun. We, of course, in previous discussions here today, housing, and specifically employment overall, like finding the right people, keeping the right people, recruiting the right people. Often you find when you are recruiting a new employee, you're not only finding a perfect fit for them, you're finding a perfect fit for their partner or their family. And that's not always easy because we don't all have the same priorities in love and what we want to do on a day-to-day basis, especially in winters like this one. But so that's the obvious low-hanging fruit challenge. We've been very lucky and we're a pretty small company so far. So we've been able to recruit sort of slowly stealing the best employees from other people in town. And, but that can't last forever, right? So sooner or later, you start looking outside and trying to bring some people in. And we've done a little bit about that. So that's certainly a challenge. And then once you get there, they have to have a place to live. And Lander is an expensive place to live. Like real estate is expensive there, and it hasn't dipped much recently. So that's a challenge as well. We personally deal a lot with I-80 as a challenge, and specifically we deal with I-80 as a challenge because we're a small parcel shipper. That's what we do. I mean, we receive small shipments, usually less than a truckload, but certainly we're not getting containers of product in. It's delivered by UPS almost always, sometimes small freight companies, but they're small freight companies. Like there's no railroad coming in, there's no plane landing in Lander. They're coming up by truck, and that means they're driving up I-80, and I-80 was closed a lot this year. So, and then we're a small parcel shipper, so everything's going out by postal and UPS, and we get a lot of customer support that, hey, you said this was going to be here Wednesday last week. And that's out of our control. So it's a lot of those kinds of issues that we have to deal with. The lucky part is we're Wyoming. Like, people know where Wyoming, they know what Wyoming means, and they're actually willing to wait for Wyoming. And so they get that we're a small business in a small town, in a small state, and they love that. That's why they love us. And so we have some forgiveness there, and we play that forgiveness card quite a bit.
That's great that you can kind of have that brand kind of recognition, not only of your own brand, but kind of tied with Wyoming. And it's interesting that that's kind of part of the equation. So that's great.
Absolutely. And it has to be, it should be.
Yeah.
Yeah, to piggyback on what you're talking about there, especially with the housing and keeping quality staff. Animal Butte was a seasonal operation for most of the staff. Typically in the wintertime, I'd see 45 to 50 employees. But I'd only keep on 3 to 5 full-time year round. But even trying to recruit them and keep them around, the proximity to the area and being in a national forest there and no additional cabins or things like that on site. So I mean, for myself, it's a 65-mile one-way drive to the office kind of deal. And so that can wear thin on people. So how do we keep people enjoying that and then making it lucrative, and then especially for qualified seasonal folks that want to be there, looking at ways to partner with other seasonal operations and things like that. That was one of the things that we did. I had a wilderness ranger, and he was a summertime wilderness ranger, but then he was my lift operations director in wintertime, so he's able to stay doing his things. But if those kind of partnerships weren't really readily available, or us going out to find them, it can be a real challenge. And you just see that. And with the portability of just housing, Sheridan is not cheap. And, Patrick, County 9, he was loud and proud. It's a lot cheaper over there, but there's no amenities over there still. Grable and Shell, there's not a lot there. And so trying to recruit certified and worth employees and staff to be a part of the team, you have to really look into what their values are and why they want to be there. As Mike's saying, they want to be there because they love the place that they're in. And so really, investing all that you can into that piece, then hopefully they'll stick around.
Yeah. So you're talking about potentially like driving, like based on the values and the interests of those employees, like providing those benefits or things like the things that would be really important to them or valuable to them to kind of add to it's not just the paycheck, it's
Yes.
the other things that come along with
Absolutely. The perks, ski area, okay, family lift passes, things like that. Or we would provide, I bought 3 buses from the city for $5,000 and I shuttled my staff up there so they didn't have to spend their money on a paycheck or their little paycheck on fuel to get there. And things like that. We actually rely heavily on volunteers as a nonprofit organization. And, we had 45 paid staff, but I had another 50 to 60 volunteers. Those folks want to be there or they, for the most part. So tapping into that as a resource is, finding what they're passionate about and can you provide it? And my father-in-law always says nothing's free. And it's true, nothing is free, but can you find ways to within your organization to subsidize it or find other helps and find the low cost thing so you're not really bouncing your P&L?
Yeah, great. Jaxon,
Yeah.
questions or concerns of, in the challenges that you're facing.
Yeah, they're a little bit different because I'm quite a bit smaller than you guys.
Yeah.
One that I thought about immediately, and I'll just run with it, was, a little bit more on the environmental side of things and like climate and seasonality of Wyoming. Like for instance, this winter or spring, sprint, or whatever you want to call it, has kind of been dragging along, making it difficult for people to get up here, making it difficult to get to places to guide them, take them fishing. And, that poses a pretty big challenge for someone like me who's just up and coming. When I need clients now, what do I do when the weather doesn't allow it, or the river isn't ideal at certain times of the year? And then, bumping that up into a bigger picture thing, for me, how do I make my business a year-round thing? Do people really want to come fishing in Wyoming in the middle of the winter when it's, 20 degrees and windy, and it's hard for them to get up here, and they might get stuck up here? And, for me, I love taking people fishing in the winter. I want you guys to come up and check this out, but that's a pretty big barrier. So trying to figure out how to keep it year round, perpetually, and growing and keeping that exposure good for Wyoming throughout the year. I feel like we got some good marketing for the summer stuff, some pretty good marketing for like skiing and some winter activities, but how do you make Wyoming appealing all year round for everybody? And that's been kind of interesting to look at as I start now.
Great. Thanks. Wes, do you want to add to any challenges that you're experiencing?
I think, in our business, one of the biggest challenges is simply because Wyoming is so remote, and we're a consumer facing business. We are very much at the mercy of the state investing in getting people here. The legislature sometimes acts as if getting money out for tourism promotion or business development is similar to wringing blood from a stone. And that's a challenging piece because it's not just tourism. Even though we live in Cody, the majority of our income comes from people who reside in Park County. And they are people who have moved to Wyoming because they are into the outdoors. The number one job, the number one consideration nationwide for people that are taking new jobs, if they look at quality of life, again and again and again in each study, is access to outdoor recreation. The people who are going to move to Wyoming to take a job, whether it's working for Mike or it's working as an accountant or whatever, they are committed to outdoor recreation probably in order to move here. They might be oil and gas, it might be whatever. Our biggest challenge is simply that our success, we're at the end of the chain, right? It's when people show up that we can be successful, but we don't create the beginning of that chain. And one of the biggest challenges, as far as like Wyoming specifically, we're very grateful to be outside of a national park, but one of the biggest challenges is making sure that the beginning of the chain is consistently funded and that there is a consistent vision for how we execute to get both residential folks here and people who are coming during the tourism season.
Yeah. Thanks, Wes. I just want to remind you guys, if you want to scan on your tables there and you want to put questions in for the panel, we do have the Slido app, and you also can upvote people's questions on there as well. But next question I have for the panel is, what advice would you have for, and I think Mike, you might have touched on some of this, is get to know those networks, but what other advice do you guys have for entrepreneurs or people who are looking to start businesses in Wyoming, particularly in the outdoor recreation space? And I'll just kind of open this up to anybody who wants to take this first. Yeah, Wes.
I would just say, always keep in mind that the hard part is not getting started. The hard part is keeping going. It takes a lot of effort to start a business. It takes a lot of effort to come up with an idea and execute on it. But you should go into those processes knowing that that's probably the easy part. And there are, here in Wyoming, we make it easy for people to start businesses. We're like, slap you on the back and say, good luck, right? But the hard part is not the starting. The hard part is to keep, is going. And I think just mentally approaching it that way is differentiates people who are successful from people who move on to their next thing afterwards.
And let me dig into that just a little bit more, because that's an important point. So what has helped you kind of keep going? Like, what are the things that have, like, I don't know, from an outsider perspective, it seems like your creativity in the business space, but I don't know. What are the things that have been keeping you going?
Well, that's a great question. Sometimes I wonder that in the morning.
That this morning.
I do. What the heck am I doing here? I do love what I do. And I think that while you don't always want to make your hobbies your job, like, I do love the outdoors and getting up and going and spending time with other people who are motivated by that keeps me going. And I think one of the things also probably that all entrepreneurs who are successful long-term enjoy is continually solving the next problem. You know, I think entrepreneurship is a commitment to process and not projects. Like you need to always want to keep in the cycle of doing something new. And at least from my perspective, that's what keeps me going.
Great. Thanks. Yeah. Advice
For having a successful business, taking an idea to success, cash. That's what it all comes down to. It's not fun to talk about, and it's and even my phone wants to. And I think Wes, you said it. I mean, you have to be thinking, that's the mindset you have to be going in from the beginning of a business. In my mind, is you have to think like, what is the piece that's going to fund this idea as it goes through? How is it going to be funded? Because that doesn't happen automatically. Like you have to really, and so if you have access to a big pocket of cash, that's really good. That's really, really good. And not just a big pocket of cash at the beginning, but one that you can kind of continue to have access to as you roll forward. We made a choice early on in our business to be a direct to consumer business. And one of the things that I didn't really have any perspective of, but it turned out to be really smart is, as opposed to your business, a little bit different, is that people pay me at the beginning and then I give them a product. And sometimes I don't give them a product for like 2 months. They pay me, I put that money in the bank, I pay payroll, I do all the stuff I have to do, and then I send them a product. And that was dumb luck. Like that, when we looked at direct to consumer, we weren't looking at that model. We were looking, or from that perspective, we were looking at like, how do we cut our niche? How do we be unique? How do we reach out? How do we not work with Cabela's buyers? Like those were our goals. But cash flow was really, really important. And so I think thinking from that perspective from the get-go is really helpful and really hard. The other piece, and I agree with Wes 100%, is do what you love. And for me, what it turned out to be is work with people that you love to work with. Because one of my business partners, Brendan Weber, he's in charge of marketing, and you'll know that'll make perfect sense when I explain this story. His opinion is you find a job that you love, that's your passion, and you do that. And if your job is not your passion, don't do it. And he was so wrong, 100% wrong, because my passion is not accounting. It is not accounting. But I love my business partners and all of my employees and the people. We spend more time at work than we do outdoor recreating. It's sad, but it's true. And I love who I do what I do with. And I'm willing to do things that are not always fun to make that part fun. And so I think that's really important, is like love what and how and who you're spending time with.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And, bouncing off of that is to just work in the places that you want to work in and with the people that you want to do it with, and consider that your challenges as a business owner may be unique to you, but they're not unique, because your challenges are going to be there if you choose to go in a different direction with your business, or if you decide not to be entrepreneurial at all, you're still going to find challenges. So, kind of sticking your nose down on your own business and doing your work, and I think just keeping a positive attitude and looking in the direction that you want to be going.
Yeah, and I think the big thing for me, and especially in the outdoor recreation space, because it's ever evolving and it's changing, technology is getting faster and things, and more things are available, but the relationships with the other providers, your event promoters, your outfitters, your equipment manufacturers, your retailers, having a good connection in that space and being able to build those relationships. Any entrepreneur, a friend told me, entrepreneurs are willing to work 80 hours so they don't have to put in 40. But without those relationships and without having that passion that these guys are talking about and being in love with what you're doing, that 80 hours will burn you. And if you don't have those relationships or that lack of relationships, that sustainability piece just isn't there. And so building those relationships and then just adapting to the market and the curve and seeing what's coming and going, wow, e-bikes. I don't know how I feel about that. Now I'm okay. My mom's riding a bike again. That's pretty cool. But yeah, having those adaptability things and seeing that and building those relationships, or otherwise they'll break you.
Do you let riders in the Dead Swede ride on e-bikes?
Yeah, we do have an e-bike category. You don't get podium, and we also have some rules there, no moto pacing the peloton. If I see that, and I'm like,
Yeah.
wait a second.
Great. Thanks, John. Now I'm going to move it on to, we got a couple of questions from the audience here, and this doesn't have to be, everybody doesn't have to answer these questions, but maybe if a few of you guys want to chime in on this, but what do you need to see from our local and state elected officials to help your efforts?
I can jump on that real quick. Just from the event standpoint, some of the support everybody talks about, well, it's the economic support that's coming in, and we're bringing in, I've got 900 riders coming in, and over 60% of them are from out of state. And our event is set up to be a 2 to 3 night in hotels or campground space like that. But I'm an event promoter and an organizer and a business guy, and I understand marketing, but I don't have the bandwidth to do marketing. And so when reaching out to like tourism and the legislators on what kind of support is there, it's been kind of a silent, soft, no. We don't want to give you that and give you that support, or even provide you with help on where to find those resources. And so I think from the legislative point is allowing, more avenues for that.
Yeah. Do you work at all with your local travel and tourism board at all for because they
They're
help
trying to,
provide some
and
of the funding?
they do some, but we actually just recently, because since we're a for-profit LLC doing, they won't give any support to for-profit events.
But it's probably on their events calendar or something like
Yeah,
that.
they put it on an events calendar, and we do see that, just kind of the scroll through, but
Okay.
for specific like branding and actually reaching out to further things in this out of our direct locale. Yeah, that's been an issue.
Okay. Yeah. Anybody else?
Yeah, I've met a lot with our local legislators and talked a lot with them. And I think what the advice that I would give is let's create a business friendly environment. Let's support economic development. There a lot of communities have economic development associations. Empower those associations, empower them to seek funding, empower them to be creative with that funding. I think that's really important to have an open mind to meeting with the business council, with meeting with both for-profit and non-for-profit event organizers. I think events are a big thing with keeping that quality of life that people really want to build in. But I really think that supporting, but more importantly, empowering the people that are making those economic development efforts is important, because change is inevitable. We're going to get people, we're going to grow. Let's drive that bus instead of getting run over by the bus, as Dave Glenn said this morning.
Yeah, that's a great one. And your building is from one of those economic development it's owned by the economic development. Right?
Well, yeah. So it was a Wyoming Business Council grant loan program, business development grant. But we had to partner with the municipality. So the building is actually owned by the city of Lander. We worked with the local economic development association to build this grant loan package. And so state funds, a good portion which were grants, half of which was grants, half of it's a loan, low interest loan. All of those monies come to the city. Then we are now, and we did some partner matches in the beginning, but now we have a long-term payment plan that over the next 30 years, we'll pay 100% of that back, including interest. And the beauty of that is the business council's program, that 75% of that grant actually stays with the city. and gets then spins back into the requirement is they have to spend it on economic development. But who doesn't want to do that, right? And this has been super successful around the state. But this is the first such program to happen in Lander, and we're really, really psyched to be part of it.
Great. Wes?
I think that from my perspective, what we need from our local and state elected officials, and I know I'm saying this to a room full of people who traveled here to be here, is from the governmental perspective. You know, governments generally exist to provide the infrastructure for you to live your life, right? Like, we need focus and commitment to the outdoor rec infrastructure, planning and infrastructure. In watching the legislative sessions over the last couple of decades, there's a real varying degree of focus on this, but it takes a lot of work to get them to pay attention. It's not just so I can sell more backpacks, but from a economic perspective, statewide, from a conservation perspective, like we've heard this a couple of times today, now is the time to commit to planning and to commit to developing the proper infrastructure for outdoor rec in the state, in order to allow our economy to thrive and for our environments to be conserved.
Yeah, and that's a great segue into the last question as well, because I'm going to have to wrap this up. We do have a couple additional questions we're not able to get to. We're just closing out here in the last few minutes, but on that particular note, we're talking about today and tomorrow about the challenges and opportunities with developing and growing outdoor recreation. So with that, what are the things that you guys are most excited about and most concerned about as business leaders as we look to potentially do that in the future for Wyoming? So do you want to take that?
Oh yeah. So I'm excited. The town I live in is the most collaborative place I've ever been. It is really fun that the hunters and the anglers and the climbers and the cyclists and the road cyclists, everybody, we all come to the table and we talk, and it's really cool. And that's what excites me the most, because I am a hunter and a rock climber, and I used to be a cyclist, and I'd like to be again. And there's so many I'm not a angler though. I gotta pick something. But that collaboration is really exciting for me. And there's a lot of fun things. And the thing that scares me the most is the contention between all those people, is that how angry some people are about whatever there is, and the hatred that happens across the table really scares me. And I've seen a fair amount of that in the last few years as well. And so it's funny that the thing that excites me the most is there's also a lot of fear in that, because it seems like we are more broken up as a culture, and that anger is all of a sudden acceptable, instead of let's just get to the table and let's chat for a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. The collaboration, I'm excited to see what's happening with the outdoor rec collaboratives that are happening within the state, and seeing those move forward and some work come out of those, and some of those pieces. A fear of that is also that same thing, that collaboration. But myself being a just let's go driver, the time, Patrick talked about that earlier in the session. It's sometimes the planning piece, as Wes is talking about. Now is the time to do that planning. Well, the energy for the entrepreneurs we're chomp at the bit. We want to get something done, but also without that plan, then we start running into issues, and well, this might not work, or we'll burn bridges and then have to undo something later on down. So yeah, the excitement for those collaborations to take place, but also then, yeah, the fear of missing the train.
Yeah, I just gonna jump to my fears. I think I worry about how natural resource extraction changes in Wyoming in the future, and how that shifts our funding, and if tourism will be able to catch up quick enough, and if that's going to create some bigger deficits and bigger holes in the future. With that, I feel like there's already a deficit of infrastructure support in terms of like outdoor recreation in Wyoming, and I don't think we just catch up on it. I don't think it just gets done. So, you know, trying to figure out how to connect the dots on getting that caught up and prepared for the future, hopefully growth. Yeah, that's where my mind's at. I'm excited to grow my own business and to shake more hands and get to know more people, hopefully break down the barriers of hostility. And I mean, there's always going to be a competitive factor of business, but it doesn't need to be hostile. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Wes, did you want to?
I'm excited. I'm excited that this thing's happening. I'm excited that we've got people from across the state coming in to talk about what we're going to do going forward. So that's an exciting thing. I'm excited, I'm excited about living in Wyoming and having access to the natural resources that we do. If I was going to say something that, I spend a little bit of time worrying every day. If I was going to tell you what I'm worried about in this venue, I would say that one of the things that I hear that I'm worried about is that we are using indicators from the last 4 years to plan 4 years from now. Yeah. And I continue to hear change in participation and visitation looking backward. And I have yet to hear anybody talk about what the projections are, because my instinct is rate of growth, rate of participation. It's not going to be 2 years from now what it has been in the last 2 years. And I think if we're, so to say, driving using our rear view mirror, that's a good way to just go right off the road. So I think that I would hope, and I would be excited to hear from a statewide perspective that we start talking about projections. And the other thing that I would tell you, like, I've got something that I'm excited about, I've got something that I'm worried about, and there's something that I hope, and that is we need to have in the state a person or a small group of people who are charismatic, visionary leaders for where we go with outdoor rec conservation and outdoor rec economy. And I'm hoping that this is the first step towards having that person, whoever she or he is, that will step out and be that kind of consistent voice for what we need to do going forward.
A czar.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're going to leave it on that note. So let's give our panelists a nice round of applause. Thank you so much for your participation.